Hi, Lara here, also known as Scrappykea on different social media. Today I want to share with you a layout that I am creating using the Painterly Pears Suite, which is a suite by Stampin Up, and I have used this recently on my Artisan design team project that I worked together with another few of the artisans, and we feature either a collection or a bundle or something like that. These are the colours that are in this collection, so there's sort of these nice, I almost want to say autumn tones, but they're bringing in some of these fresh greens, some crisp yellows, as well as that nice warmth and that sort of peach pie, and the dark blues as well. So there's quite a few different options within this suite, and I have decided to document some of our quinces. Now, quinces are a woody pear, so they're not a pear that you can pick off the tree and take a bite out of. You actually have to either poach them, soften them in some way, could even possibly roast them or something like that, as long as there's moisture involved in there. And what I've done with them here is made quince paste. Now, you can make the quince paste sort of, I guess it's almost like the jam process, but with more of the setting agent. However, I do happen to have a Thermomix, and it kind of just tells me to put in this amount of sugar and this amount of the weight of the quince and things. And I just do that, and it goes into the machine, and it cuts it up, and sort of at the end I'm able to pour this sort of paste into some moulds or into a tray, and out comes the quince paste. Now, the quince paste is fantastic with cheese, on cheese platters. You sort of slice bits off and have it, so you can sort of see on the picture that I've got there some of those cheeses with a little bit of that quince paste. I decided to go with the layout design here, sort of a 2/3, 1/3 design, where I've got sort of what my version of white space is on this layout over to the right there with that crisscross pattern. And I am going to stick down this sort of gorgeous ribbon along where I've joined those two papers along that side, and the ribbon has a little bit of it's sort of got a metallic fleck through it. You can sort of see it over there on the left with that white paper behind it, and so it sort of has a little bit of a glitter or I'm not sure quite how to describe that at the moment, but that's okay. So I'm popping these photos sort of right on that border, and I decide to use this Party Alphabet as my title, so a really bold title, and I'm using this paper here, which is sort of I almost want to call it apricot, but I think it's sort of on that peach pie section, and I'm just putting the lettering on there to cut them out. So here they come back. The magic of social media is that I can do them off screen and come back and do it. So here's the letters and how they're going to look along the edge here. They didn't quite have enough interest or depth to the title just the way it is. It just felt like it needed a little bit more. So I decide that I am going to stitch on the inside of each of the letters. So I'm just going to go through and pierce some holes on these, and then use I think I use the linen thread on here, and I'm not measuring it or anything, just trying to keep the lines generally similar spacing using the handy dandy tool. So here's just that linen thread, and threading the needle. I really should have a needle threader handy. It does take a wee while sometimes to get it through there. So I'm just going to go through and sort of do some back stitch around the letters. Well, actually it's probably more of a slip stitch might be the correct term, because I am not I don't think I fill it in, so I just sort of leave, so you can see that it's stitching and it's not just a bold line all the way around on the inside. So there the letters are. No, it does look like I have gone back and filled that in. ignore me. And so I am now going to add some of these quinces. Now this designer series paper is gorgeous in that it's got beautiful designs on it to start with, but you can actually use the die cuts with the paper. So I'm going to do that here with some of these pear shapes, and both those little ones as well as that bigger one goes through. So I'm going to see how much I can fit on my die cutting mats here and have a few different shapes coming through, not wasting the rolling time. And yep, they all fit. So here we go, we've got some nice shapes cut out. I've done that a few times and sort of got this wee collection of things that I can now tuck in on and around the pages. Now I was talking about the quince paste before. It's the tree itself. We've got one growing out in our front yard. We first came across quinces, well I did anyway, when we lived in a wee house, the house before we moved to this one, so that was probably about 18 years ago. And in this, the neighbours had a quince tree and they said help yourself, so we'd researched quinces and we did it, made the paste and things the old-fashioned way too, and it was the first time we'd come across them. So when we moved here we put in a quince tree because it was just one of those sort of heirloom type plants. Anyway, I've got a few more shapes. I'm going to do some stamping and some colouring, just so I can add some quince that are a little bit close, not quince, some of the pear shapes that are a little bit more closer aligned to the colour of the quince that were growing on our tree that you can see in the picture. So I'm going to use the watercolour paper and the stamps. So I've got just the water squirter and I'm pulling out the peach pie and the yellow colour here, and just going to ink up this stamp, and I'm sort of using one colour as a bold colour and then the other colour around the edge, and squirting the stamp in between times just to get that watercoloury kind of look, and then going the other way there and spritzing it with a bit of water and stamping that down a couple of times as well. So I am enjoying playing with these watercolour techniques using the Stampin' Up inks, and there's quite a few different things you can do with them. So you can see here that I am now using a bold water brush and just adding a little bit more colour to the edges of these still sort of wet shapes, and so they just add a little bit of that colour down the bottom edge with a little bit more control than I would have if I just inked up the ink pad. So here is the Stays On ink, and I've chosen Stays On here because I'm going to watercolour inside it and I don't want the ink to bleed. So see what colours I'm going to pick. No, I'm having a look at the stamp. And there we go. I've decided just to leave that as it is, and we'll grab another piece of that watercolour paper and play around with the same technique using the leaves, because I want them to look sort of similar when I put them together in the clusters that I've got going on there. And I decided to do a little bit of spritzing afterwards just to make that colour run a little bit more, because I will be die cutting these so that it won't matter if that goes outside the lines too much. And I'm bringing in the darker green, and like I did with the pears, I'm just going to add a little bit more detail in some of the parts to just sort of lift that colour, and to give that little bit of precision within the watercolouring process. So here we go. I have got them all sort of dried, and now I'm going to bring in some of the blend pens, and I've chosen the yellow here, and I'm going to colour in the is it the blossom, I guess, and you wouldn't normally see the blossom and the quince on the tree at the same time. So after the blossom sort of dies down, the quinces start forming where the blossoms were, so it's part of that life process of them. But I do decide just to bring in some of that colour that I used on the title there, where I coloured in these flowers. And adding a bit more detail to the centre of each of these, just a little bit more colour interest. So when you look at the whole page, you don't actually notice a lot of these details, but if you do look closer, there's lots of little interest points that you can stop and wonder about. Now, my voice is a little bit different to my last voiceover. If you've listened to the other ones, I might be coming down with a cold of sorts. We'll see. Hopefully some more vitamin C and things will stop it coming to anything, but who knows. At least I've still got a voice, I guess. So adding my, I guess, normal every page layout things with some pretty patterned paper to tuck in behind each of my photos, and sort of adhering these down, and then I will wrinkle up the edges and start building the page by sticking things down. So this time I actually decide to completely scrunch up the papers to add a nice texture behind them, and just softens it. It has that is it a home rustic look or something that, because this is kind of a page about something that we've grown at home, created at home, and that we've enjoyed eating at home, it's sort of got a home style, or that home style rustic look, I'll call that for the purposes of this video. And anyway, scrunching up each of those softens it, adds a nice texture behind without adding too much. So you saw that I adhered some of the adhesive dots, the dimensionals here, and just peeling off the backs of those before sticking them down. It means that I've got room to tuck some of these other embellishments under, and I decided that this one was going to sit lower and then this other one would sit a little bit, it's going to be, I need that little bit of a pop up, and now I've got room to put the title in, but it gives me space to tuck things underneath a little bit with using the dimensionals. So just the green tombow in behind, and I'm putting it where the thread is because that's where the biggest lift is. Not the biggest lift, that's what the lowest point will be that's touching the paper. So sort of using that stitching as a guide and adding the glue there. No precision lines at this point. Again, it's that sort of rustic, eclectic look, and able to re-stick that down. So now we need to build up all these clusters the way I had them before. It's sometimes quite hard to remember, so what you could see sort of as a general layout there may well disappear. These die cuts that I just cut with the white willow are sort of to follow along the line where that ribbon sits, where I've got that separation between the two patterned papers. And I'm starting with those first. They have a little bit less detail, so not quite as much interest in them, but they add a nice break from the yellows. And so just similarly sticking down the leaves and the pears that I did from the patterned paper, and now bringing in some of those die cut watercolour shapes that I'd used before. So mixing up both types just adds another wee point of interest, rather than it just being all of the patterned paper die cuts or all of the stamped ones. It gives variety. So I'm using a mixture of the tape and the tombow, just depending on the weight of what it is that I'm sticking down, or the fineness of it. So the leaves are little, so that the green tombow works quite well with them, whereas some of the bigger shapes can cope quite nicely with the tape going on the background. But I think it's time for me to replace the tape. I need to put in another refill in there, so I am just going to finish off mostly using the Tombow here. So there's those little flowers that I watercoloured and or blender penned. As well as you'll see there's the teeny tiny little white flowers that are going on in different places as well. Again, using just the white really breaks up the page and just adds those little points of difference all the way around. A few more here and there. I'm not sure if I end up using all of the pieces that I cut. You'll see some leftover bits sort of over on the right there, and these I put into a little container, and when I do future pages or cards or layouts, I often will sort of dip into this to find out what's left over, what colours might work, what pieces and what embellishments might sort of be able to come into it. So it's quite nice if you're doing something quick to have some extra pieces that you've cut or prepared, so that you don't have to go through that die cutting process or sticking everything, finding all the bits that you might need. And just adding a little bit of journaling. Now the final layout I do change this, so I end up doing some strip journaling about the process of making quince and when we made it, just on some white willow cardstock. And so I do cover up that journaling that I just did there. You'll have to have a check out of the page on Instagram or Facebook, again on Scrappykea, to see what that comes out like in the end. But it's basically just some strip journaling down there. And now I'm adding in some of the dots that came in this suite just to finish off the page. Again, just nice little subtle points of interest for the eye to wander over. Popping these on, I chose to put the yellow ones often in the centre of some of those bigger flowers, and then bring in those darker ones just at different points around the page. And must be just about done. The page is a lot fuller than some of my pages lately. But it just sort of fitted the photo and the story that I was trying to tell through the page as well. So bringing in all of the colours and different pieces in the single page. Hey, if you've stayed right to the end, congratulations. Thanks for watching.